Hello everyone, welcome back to the workshop, and today we are going to be looking at a brand new laser from a brand new laser company. However, this company has some solid foundation. If you're not familiar with Justin Tan, he is someone who was one of the original founders of Ortur, had a lot of involvement with their development and their innovation in the diode laser market, and now he's spun off his own company in AlgoLaser, and we're looking today at the AlgoLaser Alpha. It's their 22 watt version and their first laser out on the market. So I'm excited to see what all is in this laser, so let's just get right to it.
So I want to just really briefly here show the unboxing. So in the main box there are two. One houses the air pump, the other the main laser. On the top, when you open up the box, there's some nice documentation, an instruction manual, and some basic materials to do some testing. And then everything else is really well packaged in foam. They had the hardware kit in a nice little container. And as you get to the last piece, you'll notice that the three items, the gantry, the rail, and the module, are all tied together.
All right, so we've got everything unboxed, and just a quick flyover view of everything that comes with this kit. It's all very well labeled. They do give you a pretty nice consumable package to do some testing. You got some plywood, you got a couple sizes of acrylic, some MDF, aluminum cards, stainless steel sheet, brush for cleaning, some zip ties and Velcro. And then there is a pretty decent user manual in here. They have their quick start guide and a lot of very clear photos. So we're going to be zipping through this really quickly on the build. But then not too many parts to put together here. We got our rails, front and back pieces, our gantry. Interesting enough, the laser module is already connected up along with the hoses and everything. So some of the cable management's already done. So these three are actually, these two rails and these are already connected together. We have our USB cable, laser safety glasses. They have a little hardware kit, everything you're gonna need to put it together, power adapter, and then of course the air pump. So we are going to set up and get this assembled.
So now, unfortunately, this is the point where I realized that the main footage from my main camera was corrupted. So all I have is this time lapse. However, the build did go together very smoothly. The instruction manual was very well thought out. It explained every step perfectly. But if you do want a more detailed view into the build, I would suggest you go check out my friend the Clack Shack and his review, where he does walk you right through the build.
So I wanted to show a little bit closer the focus mechanism on here. Now, it's very simple. They have a lever on this side that allows you to loosen up and move your laser module up and down, and then you just bring it back up to latch it in place. Now what they have on the side here is this push down little bar, and you'll see this little nub comes down below that, and that's your focus tool. So we would lower our lever, set that down on top of it, put the lever back up so that it locks in place, and then there's this push button that just spring loads that back up and out of the way. And you can actually see this a little better. And another nice feature about this module is this bottom shroud is just held on by magnets. And so that works really well if you need to take this out of your way and it's going to get in the way for some reason. So here again, now you can really see that the focusing tool comes down, and again, it's nice that it's not interrupted by that being gone. That focus tool comes down. So again, we bring that down, touch it onto the top of our material, and then just hit this button on the side, and it springs it up out of the way. And so that'll set your focus for your laser to the top of your material. Now, if you're trying to cut through, you might want to drop that to about halfway through here. So you'll need to figure out if you can move this to the side, bring your lever down, and just visually drop it down halfway. That will help improve your cuts and your kerf. And then again, just bring it up out of the way. But fairly simple focusing. Nice that it's integrated into the module. Nice that it isn't interfered by removing your safety shroud. Very cool design. I think they took a lot of notes from people in the past and made a big improvement there. All right, another tip that you're going to want to keep in mind is that you will need to clean your lens on here. Now, you want to do this with your laser off. This air nozzle will just screw off, and then inside here is a cover lens. So we're going to put the module back down real quickly so that it doesn't collect debris on the focus lens. But as you hopefully can see here, you have this cover lens in here, and this will unscrew from here. And you can actually get in on this side. You can focus on it. You can get inside there with just an alcohol and maybe a little cotton swab or something. Clean that off. There shouldn't be anything on this side. You would want to make sure you don't touch that with your fingers or anything. But clean this inside one, and then put this back on, and then screw this back onto the end of your module. Another service element you might need to do is you might need to tighten up your wheels, and you'll notice if there's any play in here that you may need to adjust the eccentric nuts. Now these are on the bottom. I've flipped my laser over and I've taken the laser head off so it's not resting on that. But you'll use your wrench on these silver nuts and you'll just slightly adjust them to where there's no wiggle in this gantry. Now from the factory it's smooth and it's nice. I would like to be able to actually get in there a little bit easier, both for maintenance and just to kind of better feel these wheels, because you could tell if it's sitting in place and you can spin these freely, they're too loose. But if they're grabbing too tight, then you might need to loosen them up. But you would just use your wrench on here, make some minor adjustments to loosen or tighten that up. All right, so to access the eccentric nuts for the y-axis here, you'll need to actually remove this cover. So you need to grab the right Allen wrench, and there are two screws that are holding this plastic shroud on. And so you just need to loosen them up. You don't need to take them out all the way. So maybe about half a turn each. And they're not too hard to find by feel, otherwise you can get down there with a flashlight. And then this will slide off. So those just go onto there. They have this cap here that slides onto there. And then your eccentric nuts are up on here. Again, you want to make sure that these wheels are not sliding. This one's actually just a touch loose, so I'm going to just snug it up. So you want to feel to where it just grabs the rail, but not binding down on it. And so then your module shouldn't wiggle around in there, but it should move freely on the rails. So that's just something you might need to check from time to time if you're getting kind of wobbliness in your circles, if they're not coming out as true circles. If you're getting wavy lines, it might be a sign that your wheels are too loose or your belts are not tight enough. All right, so we completed the assembly. It did not take too much time, and I really didn't have any problems with this manual. Each step was fairly well worded. They had good descriptions of what to do. So, you know, as far as manuals, one of the better ones I've seen. There was only just like one step was trying to figure out which one was the left, which was the right. So initial impressions of this laser. I thought it was really nice. These really keyed in. There were a couple times that I had to kind of just get the angle right, but once it slid in, it locked in place really well. The screws didn't fight me going in, and they seemed to lock it in pretty square. It's a pretty good design as far as the frame. It feels pretty rigid. However, you could flex it up a little bit. So like see here, I'm able to lift this foot up while the other three stay. So you do want to make sure you have this on a level surface. Now they do provide kind of adjustable feet, it looks like. They do screw out. So if you do have a slight variation, you might be able to correct for that, but it's really important to have it on a level base. To start out with, all the cable management, most of it was attached in place. You just had to make some minor connections. And I'm really liking that the clips hold the hose, the power cable. All you really got to worry about is this kind of over on the side, sliding just a little bit, but I don't think anything's going to get in the way in the work area. Now, the way they do the laser attachment, I think is pretty cool. So they've got this, basically a cam lock on here. You flip the laser down, and what that's doing is pushing this whole thing to the side. That's pushing in on this rail. So it's still a dovetail style joint, but it's pushing the whole rail in rather than a screw going in and biting into it. So I really like seeing that. I think it'll last a lot longer. You're going to not get so many rough spots in there. And more times you tighten and loosen that. And then their focus tool, it's a little lever on the side. It pushes this little foot down. You lower the module down, pop it back up, and then there's a release button. It's spring loaded. It's just going to jump right back up. So you're not going to have a lot of issue with it scraping across your material while you're trying to get it out because of an angle or whatnot. So, and it's integrated in the module. I love seeing that. Your tensioning spots are easily accessible, and they've got marks kind of giving you a guide of where to put it. That's a nice thing for people just starting out. You need to get your belts tightened right. It's nice having a visual cue there. So as far as features up front, you know, it's got the e-stop button, so you'd push this down, that's going to stop, and then you need to twist it to reactivate it. If your machine doesn't power up, that's one thing to check. Make sure that that hasn't been pressed. They do have the key lockout like we've seen on a few other lasers. What I do like about this one is you can take it out when it's off, but you can also turn it to the on position and remove it. For people that aren't worried about using this as kind of like a child safety lockout, it's nice to not have these stuck in the laser the whole time. It's just another thing sticking up out the side that I don't want to have there if I'm working it. So really, the way of this laid out, the only thing that sticks up on the front of this is the e-stop button, and that's the only thing I want sticking up, is because when you want to stop that, you just want to hit that and have it kill power and kill the laser. So I love seeing that. Over on the side here, we do have our cable inputs, and so you got your USB-C, you got your power and control to the pump, as well as you got the power coming from your power brick to the laser. So the air assist is controlled through Lightburn via most likely the M8 control, and so then the power also comes out to this. But they also have on here, they have a digital air volume adjust. We'll have to see how this works, but I love that you have control, but that you can adjust the airflow. Because I like to leave air on when I engrave, but just low enough to keep some positive pressure coming out of the air nozzle to keep that smoke and debris away from the lens, but not blow around on your engraving too much. The other thing that I really like seeing is there is a lot of length on these cables. Nothing is connected right here, which means if you're putting this into an enclosure, you have plenty of room to route everything else outside. You just need to have a small little gasketed area here that you can run your cables through, and you're going to be able to keep that stuff out of the way, but still hooked up to the laser. So other than that, you know, they have these nice intersection blocks here for the cabling and the air, so that helps provide some strain relief on those, as well as keeping them connected firmly. So love seeing that. But you know, other than that, you know, we're going to have to start firing this up and seeing what it can do. So I'm excited to do that. We're going to probably take this downstairs where it's cooler. It's kind of warm out in my shop right now here in early August, but we'll get that hooked up into an enclosure, and we'll start running some material through here and seeing what it can do. All right, so I've ran the first tests on some 1/8 inch or 3mm Baltic birch plywood, and I always start out with the cut tests, and here are the results. I'll throw them up there for you to take a look at. Now, I did run it twice for a couple reasons. This first one, I got too excited, forgot to double check that I had set the focus right, and I then wanted to rerun it again and make sure I was getting some quality results. And the other reason is I do like to run these more than once, just to ensure that I kind of get an average, that one wasn't a fluke, either good or bad, that I'm getting a really high cut quality or a low cut quality just due to the material imperfections. Like I said, 100% power we're getting through at 500 millimeters a minute, so easily running this probably in the 450 millimeter a minute range at 90 to 100% power is going to give us great cutouts on Baltic birch. Now, so not only do we want to worry about cutting, but we also want to get a baseline for our engraving. So using the same tool in Lightburn, I went ahead and ran an engrave test. Now this laser is advertised to run up to 20,000 millimeters a minute. So I ran it from 10,000 to 20,000, just figuring that we were going to get that range. And we did get a fairly decent range. You can kind of see it's a little darker on the bottom and it drops off some at top. And so we can use this to kind of gauge where our darker spots colors are going to be at what speed. So, you know, down at 10,000, we're actually getting a little bit of a deeper engrave, whereas up here in the 19 to 20, it's just barely scratching the surface, but still leaving a dark color, whereas it drops off, you know, almost white and non-existent at the 10% up at those speeds. So this is very useful when working with our like photorealistic engravings and image type files, to have a range of what speed and power that are going to give us a good solid dark all the way up to a light. Now, the issue I have with this one is that it goes square by square. So even with overscanning on, it's hard to say, is it truly getting up to those speeds? So I ran another file, and in this one, it actually transverses the whole thing, and it just adjusts the power as it goes. So it's got a longer distance to go to get up to speed. And so this is the same test. It just jumps up in 2000 increments from 10 to 20. And it's a better visualization of the gradient. You kind of see down here, it drops off in color sooner and maybe isn't as deep as it is up here in the 10,000 millimeter or 10,000 millimeter a minute range. So with this information now, of course, we can use this either for just a static, like I want to do an engraving, this is the color, so I might choose, say, 70% power at 14,000 to get that specific color, or I know that for like an image, you know, in 18 to 20,000 millimeters a minute, I'm going to get a pretty decent gradient from almost white to dark. With that information, of course, I went ahead and just started a quick little project. And these are some things that my wife has asked me to make a few times. So these little caps, so they have like a size, the name, and the f-stop. So that is for her camera lenses. So she's got these covers that go on the back of them, and then they get stored in her various bags and drawers this way. And so rather than having to pull one out and read on the lens, we'll just take a little bit of hot glue, stick it on the end of the cap, and then when it's sitting in her bag or whatnot, she can just quickly read it. 135 millimeter Pentax K f2.8, and then she doesn't have to pull it out and try to read that on the side. Real simple project, but very useful for her, so we went ahead and cut those out. These are just hot glued on, so if we really had to, we could just pop them off. Anyway, with that information, I'm going to try some other engravings, and then we are also going to try cutting a few other materials and thicknesses, so let's jump right back into it. Moving on with more engraving tests, I used some of this kind of craft plywood here and did more of this photorealistic engrave. Now, this is about 6 inches tall, a little over 4 inches wide, and this was run at 20,000 millimeters a minute, 100% power using the Stucky mode, and it turned out really well. This took just over about 14 and a half minutes to do the engrave and cut around the outside, and the detail in there is actually pretty well, especially at this smaller size. You know, if you were to double this up and have it be about 12 by 8, obviously you're going to have more resolution available to you in that. But definitely seeing some quality in the wood engravings there. So of course we can work with other materials, not just wood. And one of the fun things to do is slate engraving. Now this one isn't finished. Some people like to finish them, sometimes to not. But I went ahead and did this engraving. Of course, this is your typical 4x4 square tile. This took about 7 minutes, and again, this is at 20,000 millimeters a minute and ran at 60% power. We're getting a nice gray tone to it without any of that extra kind of blistering that you get when you overpower it. So this is getting a very nice contrast there at those powers and speeds, and you know, you could finish this off, and some people like to finish it before, some after, some not at all. It's definitely subjective, up to you. but at that 60% power and 20,000 millimeters a minute, got a nice even engrave on here. So you can also work with some metals as far as stainless steel, anodized aluminum, or painted metal. And in most of those cases, in the painted metal anodization, it's just going to be removing that from the surface, whereas the stainless steel, it can do some colorization. And so I did play with one of these aluminum business cards here. You can see, again, keeping with that 20,000 millimeters a minute, 65% power, and this took about 5 minutes to complete the one card. Obviously, doing a power and speed test, we may be able to adjust that, but I mean, we're running already at the 20,000 millimeters a minute, which they say is the maximum for this machine, and it's doing a pretty good job for us. So aluminum business cards, definitely something that's doable with this. Set up a jig, do multiples at once, and maybe even get that time down even further. And then of course we can work with some acrylics. Now you're not going to be able to work with clear acrylic. You would be able to engrave it if you were to add a coating to it interact with, but you need something opaque. And so definitely this kind of 3mm or 1/8 inch black acrylic works really well. And so if I can get this to focus, there we go. Just made this little black cat head kind of keychain thing, added a little choker chain kind of thing on it, and a little hook there, and definitely worked out. This was done, the engraving was done at 20,000 millimeters a minute, again, 50% power, and then the cut was done at 275 millimeters a minute and 90% power in it. I don't know if I can get that in on there for you, but a very clean edge, nice and smooth, not jagged. So I was running air assist with that cut, but definitely something that is doable and getting a nice frosted look on the acrylic as well. So we've done some cutting of smaller materials and we've done some engraving on a variety of materials. Last thing I want to do is see if we can cut some thicker materials, see what is capable of there. So I'm going to throw in a few different things. We've got some acrylic here, and this is about 3/8 of an inch or about 9 to 10 millimeters thick. So this is a black acrylic, and we'll see if we can cut through that. We have the same in some plywood. This is a, what, about 7-layer plywood. And again, it's probably like a poplar or basswood plywood. And again, it's about 3/8 inch or about 10 millimeters thick. So 9 to 10 millimeters. So we're gonna see if we can cut through this. So I also have a piece of 1/2 inch. This is cedar. So that's about 12 to 13 millimeters thick. We'll see if we can get through this. Now, I'm not going to be going through really thick hardwoods with this, but when you get into the softer woods like cedar, aspen, some pine, you can get away with some thicker ones. So we're going to throw these in the laser and see how they come out. We're going to bring our focusing tool down, set that on our surface, and then we'll clamp it in place first. And really what you want to do is bring this focus point about halfway down. So with this one, what you could do is loosen this up and bring this over and just kind of visually bring this down about halfway to where your bar is sitting about halfway through the material, right there, if you can see it. And then we'll lock this back up. We'll push our button and it retracts that. Make sure we still have clearance. We'll do a quick frame. Move this more into the corner. We're just doing a circle. So we're doing a circle. We're going to start 150 millimeters a minute, 100% power, and we've got air on full. So we're going to go ahead and just run it again. Let's check that. So it does push out, and looks like it's kind of caramelized. Let's try it. We'll slow it down just to about 100 and see if it can do it that. Otherwise, I don't like going much slower than that. All right, we've got it framed up. 100 millimeters a minute, 100% power, air on. And did just pop through. I wouldn't say it's really scorched. A little dark, but not too bad. So 100 millimeters a minute, single pass, 100% power. It gets you this plywood. All right, next up, we're going to try this acrylic. This is black acrylic. It's the same thickness as the plywood we just did. So I'm going to leave it at the 100 millimeters a minute, same focus, 100% power, air on, and let's run that through. All right, I can tell that didn't go through, so I'm going to rerun it one more time. Let's see if it gets through on this one. Don't think that did, but let's lift it up and see. No, we're not through all the way yet. So let's make some minor adjustments. All right, I've changed it to 200 millimeters a minute, but 3 passes because I want to get it to move a little bit faster, but make those multiple passes. Still 100% power and full air. Okay, still not. You can kind of see I put it on the edge there. It looks like we're just not quite getting through that bottom piece, so let's try going an extra pass. All right, we're just off the edge on that one side, so we should be able to see how far it goes. 200 millimeters a minute, 100% power, 4 passes. Wait, it wants to. It is right down to the edge there, but we're not quite scoring through on this side. Matter of fact, let's see if I can peel this back and see. So you can barely make out that it's trying to break through. So we'll try one more pass, see if that does it. All right, so 200 millimeters a minute, 100% power, 5 passes, full air. Let's go. And there we go. It's popping free now. So we definitely have some lines from the layered cuts. And so it's not super smooth, but you were able to get through it. So possibly if we slowed it down, but I don't like running too much lower than 100 millimeters a minute on this stuff. You risk flare-ups and fires and sitting in one spot for too long. All right, we've got our 1/2 inch piece of cedar in here. I've reset the focus to roughly halfway through the material, and we're gonna take this back to our 150 millimeters a minute, 100% power. We'll do a single pass and see if it can get through it in that, and then we'll go from there. Nice clean dropout. Not too scorched. It's not really rubbing off, but since it dropped out that quick, let's see if we can bump up the speed just a little bit. Oh, look at that. That one dropped out too. We were just barely on the edge. And same thing, a little bit less caramelization, but look at that. Nice clean fit.
All right, so this is where I think I'm going to leave the testing for now and get some real world information out to you all. This laser is just being launched this week. Hopefully you maybe were able to catch their live stream with the product launch this week. But I have had this in my possession for the past week or so. It is a pre-release unit, so it's exciting to see what it can do. My initial thoughts on it are they've incorporated a lot of the must-haves here. We've got very high speed, and as you saw in most of my engravings, we were right up there at their top limit, 20,000 millimeters a minute. It has the safety features you need. It's got an e-stop button. It definitely has some flame sensors and tilt sensors. Even though we didn't necessarily test that in this video, having some of those in there are kind of core components to provide some extra level of safety. I really like their innovative clamping system and their spring-loaded focus tool. I think that's a great touch to their spin on how that can function but not get in the way. And I'm really excited to see that. Love the cable management on here. You do have a little bit that sticks out here, but nothing's really scraping along the bottom or the side. It's definitely staying out of the way on top of the honeycomb. I do have a couple of small little concerns. I mean, some of this is nitpicking. The wheels, they are really tucked in here, and while that does provide a lot of kind of protection from dust and debris, I just concerned that it's going to make maintenance a little bit trickier and a little out of sight, out of mind. So that's going to be something I'm going to want to keep an eye on, is these wheels. And other than that, you know, I did feel like I maybe had to tighten down the belts a little more than I would expect, but once I got that in place, this laser performed flawlessly. I was really happy with the engravings. I was really happy with the cut quality. The automatic air assist works well. I really didn't have to adjust it too much. It does have that option though. It's nice having both the addressable in light burn on and off, but also have a way within the pump itself to regulate its airflow. So I think they've hit a lot of pluses. They've still kept it fairly simple. You know, there's a lot of bells and whistles you can add to these that I just feel are not necessities. They're not required, and they can actually get in the way of your lasering experience. So I'm definitely going to be doing more with this in the shop. I'm going to be doing some projects with it, maybe testing some more materials and such. So if there's something you are really curious about this laser and want to see, leave a comment down below and I'll at least try to answer it. If not, maybe even do another follow-up video on some of those specific questions about this. And if you want to find out more, I'll definitely have links down below to where you can check out their pre-sale or their early sale pricing. I'm not sure when they're shipping, but they do have kind of like their kickoff sale pricing that I believe offers a couple $100s off these units right now. So I'll have those links down below. Appreciate you using them. And I will have some links down below to some other items that I find are useful as far as, you know, like honeycomb, extra laser safety glasses, just some of the materials I use. Some of those will be affiliate links, and they do provide a little bit of commission back to myself. And that definitely goes towards helping this channel. So I appreciate you using them. But as always, I'm just happy you're here and hopefully giving you some good information. So once again, thanks for stopping by. I hope you found this informative. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. If you thought it was useful, maybe hit that like button. And if you want to see more what's going in my workshop, definitely hit that subscribe button. And we'll see what we get up to next with this laser or anything else in my workshop. So that's going to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you can get out into your workshop and make something too. We'll catch you next time.